The cowboy expected a mail-order bride, but the woman who arrived changed everything. The air was often cold and the wind carried dust across the land, but he was used to it. This land was his home, even though it offered little comfort and even less company. He had grown up learning how to ride horses, fix fences, and care for cattle. From a young age, he understood responsibility, but not closeness. His parents had passed away early, and since then he had lived mostly on his own. Neighbors were few, and the nearest town was miles away. He spoke to people only when necessary, usually to trade supplies or sell cattle. Most days, his only companions were his horse and the quiet sound of nature. At night, after finishing his work, he would sit by the small window and watch the sky grow dark. Sometimes he felt the weight of loneliness more than the tiredness in his body. He wondered what life might feel like if someone else were there, someone to share meals with, someone to talk to after a long day. But such thoughts always seemed distant, almost impossible. He believed that a man like him was not meant for companionship. As years passed, the silence grew heavier. The cowboy noticed that even simple tasks felt harder when there was no one to share the burden. He was strong, but strength alone could not replace human warmth. One evening, while visiting the town to collect mail and supplies, he came across a newspaper lying on a counter. He did not usually read much, but one small section caught his attention. It spoke about women from faraway places who were willing to marry men they had never met, hoping for a new life. At first, he laughed quietly to himself. The idea seemed strange, almost unreal. How could a marriage begin with words on paper? How could two strangers build a life together? He folded the newspaper and left the store, thinking he would forget about it by morning. But he didn't. That night, as he lay on his narrow bed, the thought returned again and again. The next day and the day after that, the idea stayed with him. He began to imagine what it might be like to come home and not be alone. He imagined someone caring about the land as much as he did, someone who would bring warmth into the house. Slowly, the thought turned into hope, and hope turned into a decision. With careful effort, he wrote a letter. His handwriting was not perfect, but his words were honest. He described his life, his land, and his willingness to work hard for a shared future. He did not promise luxury or ease, only sincerity and commitment. When he finished the letter, he read it many times, unsure if it was enough. Finally, he sealed the envelope and mailed it, feeling both nervous and relieved. Weeks passed with no reply. Life continued as usual, but the cowboy felt different. Every time he rode to town, he checked for letters with quiet anticipation. He told no one about his decision. It felt too personal, too fragile to share. Some nights, doubt crept in. He wondered if he had been foolish, if no one would answer such a letter. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. The words inside were polite and thoughtful. The woman explained that she had lived through hardships of her own and was seeking a fresh start. She asked questions about the land, the seasons, and the kind of life he expected to live. Reading her words, the cowboy felt something stir inside him, a feeling he had not known in years. They exchanged letters over the next few months. Each letter revealed small details about the other's life. He learned that she was practical, honest, and strong in spirit. She spoke about challenges she had faced and the courage it took to move forward. The cowboy admired her resilience, even though they had never met. Through these letters, he began to feel less alone. Eventually, the conversation turned serious. They spoke about marriage, expectations, and the journey ahead. Both understood the risks, but both were willing to try. When she wrote that she had agreed to come, the cowboy felt a mix of excitement and fear. The reality of the situation suddenly felt very close. He prepared his home with care. He fixed broken boards, cleaned the rooms, and bought simple items from town to make the house more welcoming. Each small effort felt important. He wanted her to feel respected, even if the house was modest. While working, he imagined how life might change once she arrived. As the arrival date approached, his thoughts were filled with questions. Would she like the land? Would she regret her decision? Would they understand each other? The cowboy realized that he had formed an image of her in his mind, a gentle woman who would quietly accept his way of life. This image gave him comfort, but it was built on imagination rather than truth. The day before her arrival, he barely slept. He sat outside under the stars, listening to the distant sounds of the night. The land felt different, as if it, too, was waiting. He reminded himself that change was coming, whether he was ready or not. When morning came, he dressed carefully, choosing his cleanest clothes. He saddled his horse and rode toward the town, where the train would arrive. With every step closer, his heart beat faster. He felt hope, fear, and uncertainty all at once. Standing on the platform, surrounded by strangers, the cowboy felt out of place. He was not used to crowds or noise. He held the letter with her name written clearly on it, scanning each face as people stepped off the train. His mind replayed all the expectations he had built over months of waiting. He did not yet know that the woman who was about to arrive would challenge everything he believed about love, partnership, and life itself. At that moment, he only knew that his quiet world was about to change forever. The train slowed down with a loud sound, and steam filled the air. The cowboy stood still on the platform, his hat pulled low, his hands tight around the folded letter. One by one, people stepped down from the train. Families reunited, travelers hurried away, and voices filled the space. He searched every face, trying to match them with the image he had built in his mind. His heart beat fast and his mouth felt dry. Then he saw her. She stepped down carefully, holding a small suitcase in one hand and a worn bag in the other. She did not look lost or afraid. Instead, she stood tall and looked around with clear, steady eyes. Her clothes were simple but neat, and her face showed signs of a life that had not been easy. She was not the quiet, fragile woman he had imagined. There was strength in the way she moved, and purpose in the way she looked at the unfamiliar place. For a moment, he wondered if he was mistaken. He looked down at the letter again, then back at her. When their eyes met, she gave a small nod as if she already knew who he was. That single look made him feel both surprised and unsure. He stepped forward slowly and spoke her name. She answered calmly, confirming his. Their handshake was brief and awkward. Neither knew what to say next. Around them, the platform emptied and the noise of the train faded away. The cowboy cleared his throat and offered to carry her bag. She hesitated, then handed it to him, thanking him politely. Her voice was steady, not shy, not weak. They began the journey back to the ranch in silence. The road was long and the land around them felt endless. He expected her to ask many questions or to seem overwhelmed, but she simply observed everything quietly. She noticed the condition of the fences, the shape of the hills, and the way the wind moved through the grass. Every now and then she asked a thoughtful question about the land or the work. Her interest surprised him. As the sun lowered in the sky, they finally reached the ranch. The house stood alone, small and plain, just as it always had. The cowboy watched her closely, waiting for disappointment to show on her face. Instead, she took a slow look around and nodded again. She did not smile, but she did not complain either. She thanked him for bringing her safely. Inside the house, everything was clean but simple. He explained where things were and apologized for the lack of comfort. She listened carefully and said she understood. She unpacked only what she needed and placed her belongings neatly. Her actions were calm and confident, as if she had prepared herself for this life long before arriving. That first evening was quiet. They shared a simple meal, sitting across from each other at the small table. The cowboy tried to start a conversation, but words felt heavy and unfamiliar. She spoke when necessary, asking about his work and routine. He answered honestly, noticing how carefully she listened. There was no warmth yet, but there was respect. That night, the cowboy lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The presence of another person in the house felt strange. He realized that his expectations had already begun to fall apart. This woman was not there to simply follow or depend on him. She carried herself as someone who had survived much and was not afraid to stand on her own. The next morning, she woke early. By the time he came inside after checking the animals, she had already prepared a simple breakfast. She did not ask permission, she acted naturally as if this shared life had already begun. He felt a mix of appreciation and discomfort. He was used to control and routine, and her confidence unsettled him. As the days passed, they tried to adjust to each other. The cowboy showed her around the ranch and explained the work. She listened and learned quickly. She offered ideas on organizing supplies and improving small things around the house. Some of her suggestions challenged the way he had always done things. At times, he felt defensive, even annoyed. One afternoon, a small disagreement arose over how to handle a task. He spoke sharply, not meaning to, but the words came out harsh. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she looked at him directly and explained her point calmly. Her honesty caught him off guard. He realized that she was not there to argue but to build something real. Despite their efforts, tension remained. Both carried unspoken fears. He feared losing control of the life he had built alone. She feared being trapped in a place where her voice would not matter. These fears stayed hidden beneath polite words and careful actions. Some evenings she would sit outside and look at the horizon. He noticed a distant sadness in her eyes but did not ask about it. He sensed that her past held pain, but he did not know how to approach it. In his own way, he understood pain and silence. Slowly, small moments began to change things. One evening, after a long day of work, he found her repairing a torn piece of clothing with careful hands. She smiled briefly and explained that she had learned such skills out of necessity. Another time, she laughed softly at something he said, and the sound surprised them both. They began to talk more during meals. She shared parts of her past, not in detail, but enough for him to understand that she had lost much and gained strength from it. She did not seek sympathy, only understanding. He shared his own story, speaking of years of loneliness and responsibility. For the first time, he felt truly heard. Still, the gap between expectation and reality remained. He had expected ease and comfort. Instead, he faced change and challenge. She had expected safety and partnership. Instead, she faced isolation and uncertainty. Both wondered if they had made a mistake. One evening, a sudden storm arrived. Strong winds and heavy rain tested the old house. Working together to secure doors and windows, they moved quickly and without words. In that moment, they worked as a team, trusting each other completely. When the storm passed, they sat in silence, breathing deeply. Something unspoken shifted between them. The cowboy realized that this woman had not come to fit into his life quietly. She had come to change it. And whether he was ready or not, the life he once knew was already moving in a new direction. The days after the storm felt different. The house still looked the same, the land still stretched wide and silent, but something between them had quietly shifted. They were no longer just two strangers sharing a roof. They had faced a difficult moment together, and it left a mark. Not a loud change, but a steady one, like the ground settling after heavy rain. Still, life was not suddenly easy. The cowboy returned to his routines, but now he noticed her presence in everything. The way the kitchen smelled in the morning, the sound of footsteps moving through the house, the small changes she made without asking. She organized shelves, repaired worn items, and planted a small garden near the house. These things made sense to her, but to him, they felt like signs that his quiet world was being reshaped. At first, he did not know how to respond. Some days he stayed quiet, keeping his thoughts to himself. Other days, his frustration slipped out in short words or long silences. He did not mean to hurt her, but he struggled with change. For years, he had lived by his own rules. Now those rules were being tested. She noticed the distance but did not push him. She understood that trust did not grow in a single season. Instead, she focused on what she could control. She worked hard, learned quickly, and proved through actions that she was not afraid of this life. She rose early, helped with daily tasks, and never complained about the hard work. One afternoon, while fixing a fence together, the tension finally surfaced. A small mistake led to sharp words. The cowboy spoke out of habit, not kindness. The The silence that followed felt heavy. She stepped back, took a breath, and then spoke clearly. She told him she had not come all this way to feel small or unheard. Her voice was calm, but her words were firm. He stood there unsure how to respond. No one had spoken to him like that in years. At first he felt defensive. Then slowly he felt something else, shame. He realized that he had expected her to fit into his life without changing him at all. He had wanted comfort, not growth. That evening he apologized. The words did not come easily, but they were honest. She listened without interruption and accepted the apology without holding it over him. That moment did not solve everything, but it opened a door. After that, they began to talk more openly, not just about work, but about thoughts and worries. She shared more about her past, about losing people she loved and learning to rely on herself. She explained that independence was not a choice for her, it was survival. He began to understand that her strength was not meant to challenge him, but to stand beside him. He shared his own fears, something he had rarely done before. He admitted that he was afraid of losing the only life he knew, afraid that change would mean losing control. Saying these things out loud made him feel exposed but also lighter. They began to learn each other's rhythms. He learned when to step back and listen. She learned when to ask and when to wait. They still disagreed at times, but those moments no longer felt like battles. They felt like steps toward understanding. The land itself tested them. A dry spell threatened the crops and the animals. Work became harder, days longer. Instead of facing these challenges alone, they faced them together. She brought ideas he had never considered, simple but effective solutions. At first he resisted, then slowly he saw results. Trust grew through shared effort, through tired evenings and early mornings, through quiet meals and longer conversations. Laughter returned in small, unexpected ways. A joke at the wrong time, a shared smile after a long day. These moments stitched something stronger between them. One night, while sitting outside under the stars, she spoke about fear. Not fear of work or hardship, but fear of hoping for too much. She admitted that she had been afraid to believe in this new life, afraid that it might disappear like others before it. He listened carefully, understanding more than he spoke. He told her that he had spent years believing he did not deserve more than survival, that comfort and companionship were things meant for other people. Saying this made him realize how deeply loneliness had shaped him. They sat in silence after that, not uncomfortable but thoughtful. The stars above felt closer than ever. In that moment they were not cowboy and bride by arrangement. They were two people choosing to stay despite fear. As weeks turned into months, the house filled with signs of shared life. The garden began to grow, repairs held strong. The land responded slowly to care and patience. So did they. Still, doubt returned from time to time. On hard days, old habits resurfaced. He would withdraw. She would grow quiet. But now, instead of letting silence grow into distance, they addressed it, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes imperfectly, but always honestly. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, the cowboy realized something important. The woman who had arrived on that train was not there to complete him. She was there to walk beside him. The strength he once feared had become something he relied on. He began to see love differently, not as something gentle and easy, but as something built through effort, respect, and choice. She was not the person he had imagined when he first sent that letter. She was more real, more challenging, and more meaningful. For her, the ranch no longer felt like a place she had to endure. It was becoming a place she belonged, not because it was perfect, but because she was part of shaping it. She felt seen, heard, and valued in ways she had not before. By the end of that season, both understood that what they were building was not based on expectation. It was based on growth. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, they were no longer walking it alone. The final season arrived quietly, without announcement. The land began to change again, and so did they. The heat softened, the days grew shorter, and the evenings carried a calm that had once felt empty but now felt full. The cowboy noticed this difference in small ways. The house no longer felt silent when he returned from work. There was movement, sound, and purpose. Life had taken root. He no longer woke each morning feeling alone. Even when they did not speak much, her presence brought comfort. He found himself thinking about her during the day, wondering how her tasks were going, whether the garden needed water or if she had eaten well. These thoughts surprised him. They were simple, but they mattered. She, too, felt the change. The ranch no longer felt like a place she had arrived at by chance. It felt like a place she was choosing every day. She took pride in the work, not because it was easy, but because it was shared. When problems came, she did not face them alone. That alone made the struggle different. They began planning together, not grand dreams, but practical ones, improving the house slowly, preparing for harder seasons, making the land stronger. These conversations felt natural now, no longer careful or guarded, but honest. They spoke as partners, not strangers. One evening, while sorting supplies, the cowboy paused and watched her quietly. He realized how deeply she had changed his life, not by force but by presence. She had brought order where there was chaos, warmth where there was distance, and courage where there was fear. Most importantly, she had shown him that love did not mean losing himself. It meant becoming more than he had been. He spoke that night, sharing thoughts he had never put into words before. He told her that when he first sent the letter, he was searching for comfort. He admitted that he had expected something simple. He thanked her for staying even when it was hard. His voice was steady, but his meaning was deep. She listened quietly. When she spoke, her words were gentle but strong. She said she had not come seeking rescue. She had come seeking a chance to build something honest. She admitted that she had feared disappointment, but she was glad she had stayed. Not because life was perfect, but because it was real. That conversation marked something important. They did not make promises filled with fantasy. They made promises rooted in effort and care. They agreed to continue choosing each other, even when days were heavy. As time passed, their bond grew stronger. Neighbors began to notice the changes at the ranch. The land looked healthier. The house felt warmer. Visitors sensed the balance between them. They were not loud or dramatic, but they were steady. People respected that. Challenges still came. Storms returned. Crops struggled at times. Old doubts tried to resurface. But now they faced these moments together. When one felt weak, the other stood firm. When one lost patience, the other brought calm. This balance became their strength. The cowboy learned to listen without feeling threatened. She learned to lean without feeling trapped. Each learned from the other. They did not erase their pasts, but they no longer let the past control them. One quiet morning, as sunlight touched the land, the cowboy realized something simple and powerful. The woman who had stepped off that train had not changed everything by arriving. She had changed everything by staying, by working, by caring, by challenging him to grow. For her, the realization came while tending the garden. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear she had carried, the strength she had built. She understood that she had not lost herself in this life. She had found a place where her strength was valued. They did not speak of love in grand ways. They showed it through daily actions, through shared meals, through quiet support, through standing side by side at the end of hard days. Love, they learned, was not loud. It was consistent. As the year came to an end, the ranch stood as proof of what they had built together. Not perfection, but progress. Not fantasy, but truth. The cowboy no longer measured his life by how much land he owned or how much work he completed. He measured it by the peace he felt when he returned home. The woman no longer measured her future by escape or survival. She measured it by belonging and purpose. What began as a practical decision had become a shared life, one built on respect, patience, and choice. The cowboy had expected a mail-order bride. What he received instead was a partner who changed not just his home, but his heart. And in that quiet, honest way, everything truly changed.